Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation about taxes and tax report in Odoo 15. So my name is Olivier Colson. I work as a developer in R&D at Odoo on the accounting module, and I'm here today to give you like the technical keys of the things we changed this year for this new version. So actually, I isolated two things among the huge load of stuff that we did for this version that are like more interesting to discuss from a technical point of view. So first, automatic carryover, and then the cache basis refactoring. And after that, I'm just going to give you a list of other features we made that you might want to check up just because they are interesting and because, yeah, we all love accounting, right? So let's start with the automatic carryover. So tax carryover, what is it exactly? Well, essentially, yeah, what's that?
Hey, did you order a text to carry you over?
Don't pay attention. No, Marcelo, I'm actually talking about cash basis taxes. So what is a cash basis tax? So it's actually a tax that is exigible on payment. So you want to declare the tax to the state only when the invoice gets paid and proportionally to this payment. And on the other side, you have like non-cash basis taxes, which are exigible on invoice. So you declare them when you're making the invoice. So it has nothing to do with taxes, actually. So for this, we introduce actually a new model in Odoo 15 called account tax carryover line. So before we did not support that, so we needed something new because you actually don't want to create accounting entries for the carryover in each period you are carrying amounts to. You want to have an amount in period A that will be reflected in period B without having to recreate an accounting entry in period B. And so for that, we needed this kind of magical new model that is injecting amounts in the tax report without creating account move lines. And so how does it work? Well, essentially, each line of your tax report can be linked to multiple carryover lines, and they work like, a list of values that need to be added together to get the carryover amount. So that's the thing that I want you to understand with this slide is actually that they are cumulative. So here in February, in my example, for example, the total carryover will be of 10 plus 15, so 25. So knowing that, you already know half the stuff about the carryover. So nice. Let's go on. How do we create those carryover line? Actually, if you're familiar with the tax report, you know that there is only one place where the tax report will actually be final. And so when it's final, you can say, okay, I'm going to create those objects that are going to put amounts in the next periods. So it's the tax closing. So when you are actually posting your tax closing entry, it will generate the carryover lines automatically. So of course, you're welcome to do them manually or to change them manually for support or whatever, and we'll see that as well, but it's not the main flow, I would say, of course. So let's consider a small example of a carryover line, of report using carryover lines. So here, the Belgian tax report, grid 81. So grid 81 is a bit special because it may contain a negative amount at the end of your tax period, but when it does, you must declare it to the government as 0. And then you need to take this negative amount and carry over to the next period. And if it's still negative in the next period, you need to carry over again, and so on and so on. So it's kind of special. How do we implement that? We actually add a new field for that called carryover condition method here. So this is a function that is going to be called by the carryover code, and is essentially returning bounds for the carryover. So it's returning a tuple with two elements here, so 0 and none in our example, that are the lower and upper bound for the carryover. So if I am under the lower bound or above the upper bound, I'm doing the carryover. So here, 0 as the lower bound because I want to carry over negative amounts, and none as the upper one because I don't want to carry over anything for positive amounts. And so with that, you can see that in the tax report, when I have a negative amount, so in the left, minus 20 for August, it will get carried over in September here. And you will see it in a little pop-up next to the amount of the line in the period. So we actually split the amount. You see that here I have 60, and then the pop-up tells me, oh, but you have minus 20 that will come on top of it, and so it will do 40 when you're actually generating the export file for the government. So we do that this way because we don't want to mix those amounts. Otherwise, it would get confusing to the user, because when auditing the line, you expect to see the things from the period and understand where the balance of the line comes. So here, the 60, you will see them, but not those minus 20 since they don't come from account move line. So that's basically it for the first example. Let's consider a less simple one, but Trust me, it's not going to be so difficult. So this one is actually defining a bunch of other fields you can see. So we still have the carryover condition method, but what does it do? Well, this line comes from the French tax report. So it's grid 27. Grid 27 is actually designed so that it will always forward its amount to the grid 22 of the next tax reports. And grid 22 is essentially always containing only the content of the previous grid 27. And so here we are defining a carryover condition method, just like before with Belgium. And you can see that it's basically designed to always carry over because bounds are 0, 0. Then you have the carryover destination line ID. So this field wasn't used in Belgium, and it's actually used to say, okay, my line here, so grid 27, is carrying over to another report line. So carryover destination line ID here, grid 22, you just give the XML ID of the line. And so the third field we have here is a bit trickier actually. Is carryover persistent? So what kind of beast is this? Actually, it's just a Boolean field that is telling you how the line will handle the carryover amounts that get created in tax carryover line. So here, if it's true, you actually will keep the previous amounts and just add your carryover amount on top of them without trying to influence the whole balance of the carryover. So I have in my example here two carryover lines that exist for June and July, and I have an amount of 10 that needs to be carried over when closing August. And when I do that, if the line is carryover persistent, basically I'm just going to add a tax carryover line with amount 10. And so it's going to be 20 plus 14 plus 10, so 44 in total for the carryover after August. If the line is not persistent, so if the Boolean is false, what I'm saying is actually that I want to bring the whole balance of the carryover to the amount that I'm trying to carry over. So here, it's what we are doing in France. I actually want the whole balance to become 10, so I'm adding minus 24 because 20 plus 14 minus 24 equals 10, simply. And so the last question, the destination line. So you still have to add something on the destination line because in France, grid 22 is actually not exactly behaving as grid 81 in the Belgian report. In the Belgian report, we were splitting the amounts and we had the total that was carried over, that was triggering the little pop-up, and we had the total in the current period. So we actually don't want that in France because in the total period, grid 22 will always be 0 because it only is used to contain the carried over amount. And so here, actually, we just add a field saying, okay, should this line include the carryover within its balance when displaying it in the report? And so in France, in grid 22, yes, so the field is true. And so basically with all that, you can see that in the report, I have my amount of 20 here in August in grid 27, and it gets forwarded to grid 22 in the next period where I find those 20 euros again, and we don't split the amounts because it wouldn't be user-friendly here. Oops, sorry. Last question you might ask is, can I debug those lines? So yes, you can. So in debug mode, just open the tax report form, tax report lines form, and on this form, you have the carryover lines that are listed in a distinct tab, as you can see here. So it's pretty user-friendly, and you can edit them, change them as you want if needed. Next up, the cache basis refactoring. So what is cache basis exactly?
Well, everybody knows that cache is the base of everything.
Right. Well, actually, I'm talking about cache basis taxes here. So what is a cache basis tax? It's tax that is exigible on payment. So you have to declare the tax amount only when you receive the payment and proportionally to this payment. And next to the cache basis taxes, you have what we call taxes exigible on invoice. So the regular ones, actually, the one you declare when you're doing the invoice and for the full amount of the tax. So let's consider an example in V14 to see how we were doing with those things before. So here is just a vendor bill with a cash basis tax of 20%. So if we have a look at the move lines, here's what we get. And actually, so just a comment here, this appears in VAT field, so it's the tax exigible field. It's not in the view in standard, so you might be like, what is it doing there? I just added it for the sake of my explanation. So basically, you can see that the cash basis tax is just generating the same kind of account move lines as a regular tax, except that you have here a value that is false in this Boolean, in this tax exigible field for the base and tax lines. And that's essentially how we were handling taxes, cash basis taxes in Odoo 14. So when a line has a value of false in tax exigible, actually it won't be considered at all by the tax report. And so the tax report is only considering the ones with value true. And so when you're doing the payment here, you generate a cash basis entry, and this one has the exact same tags on the correct amount. So here I paid half of the invoice, so you see only half the base and tax amount, and the Boolean is true on every line. And so maybe we can do better than that, actually, because there are limitations with that. So let's have a look first at the tags. The tags are set on every line, so both on the invoice and the cash basis move. So it means that you're setting tags on non-exigible lines. Do we want that? Because actually, it's kind of confusing, because if you consider this invoice here, when the user is looking at that, I would expect him to be like, okay, I see my tag on this account move line, so this means that the related tax report line will be impacted by this move line. And actually, the current behavior, at least in 14, with this tax exigible field is like, we do that, and then you have the tax exigible field being like, oh, but actually not this time. This tag doesn't count. You just ignore it. So it's confusing because the user has to keep in mind the configuration of his taxes to understand the move that is generated for them. And yeah, we can do better than that. So other limitation is that we cannot combine taxes efficiently. So if you have taxes with different exigibilities, so like here I have a VAT that is exigible on invoice, I have a withholding tax that is exigible on payment. If you do that, it will not work because you cannot know what value to put into that Boolean field on the baseline. It should be exigible if you're considering the non-cash basis tax, but it should not if you're considering the cash basis one. So this is just not working. And so this is an actual case. I'm not making it up for the sake of my explanation here. I'm using it, but I'm not making it up. And it's actually what drove the whole refactoring of the cash basis engine. So let's see how we handle those. In V15, what we do first is that we totally get rid of this tax exigible field on account move line. So we replace it by domains on move lines and SQL handling, and so combining the domains and SQL parameters to handle that properly in the right reports. So you can see here one of those domains, actually the main one, that is just mimicking the behavior of the tax exigible field. And this field here, this domain, sorry, you can see that it uses a bunch of different features and is actually using another field that we're going to talk about just after. So with domains like that, we also do, I told you, SQL handling. We use the tax details. So the tax details is actually a big SQL query that is, well, matching tax amounts and base amounts and splitting the things properly. We did that for the EDI, so it's in account module. It's available for any kind of report that you would like to do, and I really encourage you to use this because it's like more standard. And you can see that this tax details query is here handling exigibility with a distinct column in the result that it is giving. And so essentially, when you have combined taxes, so cash basis and a non-cash basis one, what will happen is that for the tax details, it will return two distinct amounts. One will be tax exigible, the other one will be non-tax exigible. And with this, we can make everything work properly. We also use a computed field, a new computed field on account moves, are always tax exigible, so it's the stored computed field. And this field is actually used to handle a specific case that we were already handling in V14, but we just changed the way we do it. So what happens in V14 if you do an account move without any payable or receivable line, and you just use cash basis taxes on it? Well, you won't have any reconciliation on a payable or receivable since you don't have lines on those accounts. And what do you do? What is exigible? Actually, everything should be exigible then, because there won't be any payment. So it's as if it has immediately be paid. And so to handle that, we were just hacking the post method and changing the value of the tax exigible field on all the move lines of that move. We don't do that anymore. We use something way more standard and simple. We just use a computed field on the account move that is essentially saying, okay, all the cash basis taxes that I have in this move should always be exigible. And we use that in the reports and in the domains to get all the amounts we need. last but not least, we only assign tags when the lines are actually executable. So you can see here a vendor bill with cache basis tags on it, and you can see that I don't have any tags anymore on it because those lines are not executable, and we want to avoid showing tags for the user when it's unclear. So here it would be unclear to have them because those lines won't impact the tax report actually. And so let's just give a more solid example with that with combined taxes. So I have my VAT that is not cash basis, and I have my withholding that is cash basing. If I mix them on an invoice like that, and I look at the move lines, you can see that I only keep the tags from the VAT tax on the invoice, and on the cash basis move, I only keep the tags from the withholding tax. So with that, we have actually everything we need, and it's way clearer for the user. So that's it for cache basis. Let's just end with this list of other features you might want to consider. So I don't really have time to develop them now, but essentially go and have a look because they are super nice. We spend a lot of time to improve a lot of things in the tax report this year. And I really encourage you to just have a look at other talks during this audio experience about all these features because my colleagues will showcase them way better than I would do now. And with this, I hope, Marcelo, that it is clear to you.
Actually, Olivier, much clearer. It makes a lot of sense. Just hop on. I will take you to V15.
Actually, could you drop me at the Q&A session, please?
Of course.
Okay. See you in a few seconds.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new Q&A session with Olivier. Thank you so much, Olivier, for this great talk about
You're very welcome. Actually, it's my pleasure to be here.
Very nice. So actually, we have one question from Chris that is asking if are we able to use this V15 solution, and is this something that we can turn on with all changing code? Okay. He said that he see a lot of code in your example.
Yeah, that was the point. So it is supported by migration. So I assume your question here is especially about the cache basis part. So yeah, it is handled by migration. So essentially, you don't have anything to do for it to change and to be supported with old data as well. The script is handling everything. So it should be super smooth.
Okay, thank you. This is another question coming from Nathan. We have to handle different tax rates when selling products in different states and companies. Can Odoo handle and apply those rates automatically?
Sure. It depends on how you configure your product. So it's not especially something that has to do with what I was talking about today, but indeed, on your product, you can configure taxes. And so essentially, it works with that. And so if you need to change the rate depending on some criteria, you have fiscal positions for that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan, for this question. I've checked here in the chat. There are no more questions, but we also have. I had something that I want to talk about. You exposed a lot of new feature in this new tax report. Can you maybe develop one that you have think about, and maybe the coolest one that you
actually,
think about?
I list a bunch of things at the end of the presentation that I don't really explain, but that other people explain in other talks, so that's fine. And I would say my favorite one, and the one that I think is the most powerful for the tax report is multi-tax report. So we added this feature to support cases where you have foreign reports. So for example, you have your accounting in Belgium and you want to submit your tax report in France as well. And so it's a French tax report. This wasn't quite supported before. And so you had to define a whole framework around that because you need a VAT number in France that needs to be different than from Belgium. And so, yeah, it required really a lot of thinking to do that. And I think the solution we have here is both easy to configure, easy to use, and just convenient. So I really like this feature. Yeah, I would say that's my favorite one.
Okay, your favorite one, but I'm sure that you have others. There's also another question that comes that is asking, should have different taxes for each product from Phantom products? How can we handle it? I don't know if you...
From Phantom product.
You get this one, or we can maybe ask...
Not sure I get it.
Okay. Maybe Dixit Vaj, I can just explain again or reformulate the question so that Olivier will be able to answer. Me, I had another question. I mean, can you give more information about OSS? You talked a little bit about this in the talk. Can you maybe?
So OSS regulation is something that started at the beginning of summer this year in Europe, and so essentially, so I was talking about multi-tax report, and it's actually this, but slightly different. So you have customers in France, you are selling to them in France, but you are declaring the French VAT in your domestic country, so here Belgium, for example. And so to handle that, we had to quite change the already existing this L10N EU service module. So we also did that in stable, actually, and what we added in V15 is a new report that is just displaying everything and allowing people to just really do the declaration in the smoothest way possible. So it's really for foreign operations. We pre-populate fiscal positions with a mapping that we define to just get the closest approximation we can of the mapping between the rates in your domestic accounting and the foreign ones, and then it just needs to be quickly reviewed by the user and can be used in all European countries. So it's quite convenient as well, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Olivier. There is also, I mean, I think that Tony is giving a little bit more information about the other question by saying that a phantom product as in a kit. So I think that they are talking about multi-component. I don't know if that's clears it up or okay. So I'm gonna reformulate because there we have another another way of formulating it. Kit product have 3 different product. Okay, all product belongs to a different tax in a sales order. How can we have a tax for all taxes based on the part product from a BOM kit?
Honestly, this I don't know. So we can discuss that in more details, or you can go in the accounting room for that. You have the whole team there. So this is not my specialty actually. So I'm not sure, and I prefer not to give an answer and say something that's just wrong. So, but we can discuss that with the others.
Okay, yeah, let's do it like this. We have another question coming from Benjamin that he's asking, I've been told that thanks to the base affected by previous taxes, the subtotals on tax groups and the new tax widget on invoice, the discount management is also improved.
Yeah, actually, what we do on the invoice and what we changed in the widget displaying the amounts is that we add the possibility to define a subtotal on the tax group. And so by default, it's not done. So it's just having like before. So if you don't need it, it's just totally transparent. You don't see it. But in some cases, you might want to have different subtotals on the invoice and grouping the different tax groups under those subtotals. For example, it's the case with withholding taxes. So in that case, in most countries, I would say, because it kind of depends which one you're considering, you want to display the amount without the withholding tax, but with the VAT, and then remove the withholding tax. And so to have all those subtotals, you can just define value in that field. And so the subtotal is going to be displayed like on top of the tax groups, and multiple tax groups can share the same subtotal, and they will be grouped under the same subtotal. So again, fairly simple to configure and super convenient.
Okay, thank you. Another question coming from Martin. In Switzerland, we know the balance tax. Is Odoo able to handle this?
I don't know what this is, so I would be very interested to hear about it, because I don't know.
Okay, no worries. So you have seen also that Aurélien added an extra chat, like an extra group, where you can also maybe go more deeper into this specific question. I think that what you have exposed today, what will also be really nice, if you are allowed to say it, is what are you working on this specific application, on this specific tax reports?
Can I
for
say that?
V16? Yeah.
It's top secret, you know. If I tell you, I'm gonna have to kill you. So
Okay.
no, actually, without giving too much information, I can tell you that we plan for V16 to make the tax report evolve like a lot. I won't give the details, but I have a bunch of ideas. And so also the carryover, to talk just a little bit about the content of the presentation here. These carryover lines, actually with them, we're just adding a new object that is allowing us to influence the amount in the report with something else than account move lines. And it's actually something that could be interesting for other reports. So I'm thinking about Spain, for example, where you have a bunch of manual values that the user has to input every time he opens the report. And clearly, I think there is room here to just kind of generalize the carryover lines a little bit and allow them to make persist manual data into the database, and so just enhance everything with that clearly. So yeah, that will be my only hint for
Okay.
16.
That's not enough information to kill me. So that's good.
You think so?
We also have seen during the presentation that there are changements in the way the taxes appears in an invoice. Can you maybe explain a little bit more?
Yeah, so
what is
actually, I was explaining the withholding tax and the subtotal just before, and it's exactly what I was using on this invoice. So if you rewind the presentation and just go look at my invoice using a withholding tax, I was using that thing. And so the total on the invoice was displayed slightly differently than with just regular, I would say, vanilla Odoo configuration. So yeah, that was it.
Okay, wonderful. We have maybe time for one last question. Does Odoo 15 support e-invoicing in Saudi Arabia? I don't know if you have an answer for that.
E-invoicing in Saudi Arabia, not yet. I don't know if there is plan for that. We are currently working on improvements on Saudi Arabia's localization, so it's possible that we have things for that. But for this, we can discuss it in the localization room. Actually, Jost is there, and he's going to know the answer to this question.
Okay. So if you have any other questions, you can, of course, join the link that we have put in the chat. And we thank you a lot for your time, and hope to see you soon during this OXP.
Yeah, I enjoy the experience.
Thank you, Olivier.